Boom. We are live, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. It's a fun episode. We've got Vidor, the founder and first CEO, happily having this conversation with us today. Vidor, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Happy to be here.
Well, this is your first ever time on YouTube, is this correct?
I would say yes. Apart from the 20-minute very long demos that we did for the first version of our apps, but I like everyone, please just don't try to find that on YouTube.
Yeah. Okay, so before we go to the product, let's start with you. So, Vidor, where in the world are you right now, and why are we chatting? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I'm currently in Serbia. We are running something called Solrise Finance. Basically, we've put together a pretty cool asset management platform on top of Solana, and I guess that's the main reason why we're talking today.
Perfect. Well, one of the things I want to do is just start by making conversations like this, like more personal, not always tech focused, and just we think that the team is generally one of the strongest aspects of product and the services that they're trying to provide. And because of the vision, they're usually the people that are building the idea and have the vision behind it as well. So before we started the conversation, you were telling me that you have maybe every dollar you've earned has been working from computers or programming or technology to begin with, pretty much.
Maybe a small correction. There hasn't been a dollar that I haven't earned that I have earned by not doing computer related
Yes,
things.
there was. Thank you.
So
Much better when we quote you from you. Thank you.
so yeah, I mean that's basically the story. I've been like a they call it a technologist, but I've basically been coding since like I was like 12 or 13. Been playing video games, been forming communities, building products, any sort, shape, or form of development that you can think of. I've engaged in, and yeah, I've been doing that for like more than 15 years right now.
I wanted, because of how we started the conversation, I wanted to go abstract into this spot before we go to Solrise, just for fun. I think it'd be cool to explore. So you talk about playing video games. Like, did you? So did I hear that right? You got paid to play video games at one point.
So that's a funny thing. If you want to go deep into it,
Just
like the
one
core
minute.
of my
Yes, yeah, I want to know.
yeah, so the core of my friends, we've all and the people who have built Solrise right now, we've met actually playing Counter Strike 1.6, and we were not like we were hardcore gamers, right? But we were a bit entrepreneurial. So what we were doing, we were spinning up like Counter Strike 1.6 servers, selling administrative spots, like selling slots to get in when the server is full, spinning up like forums, like web discussion boards, and like trying to be basically to figure out things when you're made to like when you need to do sort of things like brings you a long way. So it made me like figure out web development, figure out PHP databases, programming in general, and then I've always tend to be on like the bleeding edge of technology, so that's naturally like was my progression towards blockchain.
So, I'm not much of a tech person, but I've always been interested in finance, funds, volatility, or like the borderless concepts up at the top. Now, one of the things I find really interesting about Solrise specifically is that as we see the future evolve, you're seeing, the Reddits and the 4chans of the world have really led some of the conversations. GameStop, where you're kind of getting this mass movement of people investing together. And this is one of the things I think that could make something like Solrise so powerful. Do you want to help tell us how you went from the blockchain world to trying to work on decentralized asset management?
Yeah. So we, as a team of developers, we were in Solana pretty early, long before it was cool. We've also built like two integral pieces to the ecosystem, which is the Solflare wallet, which is one of the most popular wallets on Solana, as well as Solana Beach, which is the de facto go-to blockchain explorer. So we were thinking, because Solana being so new, we wanted to think of a product and we wanted to build something cool on it. Asset management, the idea of it really came out of some frustration of how GameStop and like Robinhood handle some of the GameStop trading, as well as us trying some similar platforms on Ethereum where we were like so sick and tired of needing to pay $500 to enter a fund and $500 to exit a fund. I mean, in reality, like, do you really need like $30,000 or $40,000 to participate in those protocols? So we found like Solana's competitive advantage, that it's so cheap in transaction fees, and we are basically by this way, by letting people like invest in as little as like $20 and basically not notice the transaction fees, we think that we're hugely democratizing like this investment space, and we are broadening the surface of the retail investors that will be able to participate within these protocols. So yeah, that's roughly our motivation.
There's kind of always this interesting conversation around community building. It's one of the reasons why we thought Binance would be a good investment in the first place, not because they had great tech, but just because of the community that they were building specifically. Now, Solana is orders of magnitude better than the Binance Smart Chain, but we did see a lot of people migrate over there almost strictly due to the cost and in no inherent way to do with the technology or the security or the safety of the technology or the money or the funds that might be behind that technology to begin with. Now, one of the parts about asset, like, do you have what's your background in fund or monetary conversations? Is it relatively new to your structure?
Yeah, so I guess it's not really necessarily tied to traditional fund management. I bought my first bitcoins in 2010 and been hodling since, right? So my motivation to track some of the cryptocurrency markets and find these interesting ways how money can be invested, and then figuring out that I'm probably not the smartest person to do those things and want to give that possibility to someone else who has maybe less access to capital but is more able to analytically break down how markets behave and where to invest. So this is basically like the idea came out of utility. I really don't have such traditional finance background. But I mean, to reassure everyone, we are talking with a lot of fund managers giving us a lot of cool ideas on what they think would work within our platform that doesn't work in traditional finance.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's a big part of the question too, is how do you arrive at those ideas? And I like this. It was a necessity for you being like, okay, well, who should be managing my funds? It's such an interesting conversation too, like the broad spectrum ideas of volatility and how you deal with volatility, especially throughout long periods of time. It's always a fascinating, like, conceptual game to play. So you guys are launching on FTX on the 29th. Now, one of my interests has always been in venture capital. What I really find is a huge opportunity in this space is the fact that, just like you're like Solrise is leaning into, is that this a lot of this represents opportunity for more people, right? More people to participate in active areas that it's harder to get into. The costs are extraordinarily high. You got to be in the know. You need to manage X amount of money. You need minimum accredited investor. And a lot of the times the boundaries hurt people as much as they help them in terms of regulatory standards. And some of the things we've seen, obviously to an advantage of the technology, is that you can kind of side skirt the regulatory advantage because the person isn't actually holding someone else's funds. They can walk away whenever they want. There's no like just taking the funds. One of the things that I wanted to ask here is, like, from the front end, how do you, because are you, so I'm sorry, I don't want to get too convoluted. Right now you guys are running on like the beta test net up front, right? Like you go in, you could play with
Yes, it's called Dawn. It is our incentivized testnet or trading competition, however you want to call it. I think we had around 60,000 people signed up and participate, created roughly 50 or 60,000 funds, and basically it was a huge competition for the first place. And later we can touch on the topic of what fun ways people use to try to get high on the leaderboards. So yeah, basically that's the answer to your question. We are now running our incentivized testnet. Actually, it ended today, and we have our FTX IEO on Tuesday.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I guess I was trying, like, I like that. I played around with it a little bit. I myself like venture capital. I love early stage stuff. I like the very beginning. And what's unique is these launch pads are basically early stage venture capital. I mean, even Bitcoin itself, like the ability to participate and be rewarded, it was almost like venture capital. You're helping incentivize the growth of the system through its network effects. I think it's fantastic. So it was really easy. It was very cheap. It was very fast, as in comparison. I started a little fun there. Does that mean the testnet is closed now, and it's just you guys are going live after the launch as well?
We are crunching the results, and we're going to announce them in the coming days. It's been hugely successful. We need to filter the results to eliminate some malicious behavior that might have happened. Our FTX IO is on Tuesday, I think it's the 29th, and basically we will have around a 2 to 2.5 month period to revisit some of our DeFi integrations and then go to mainnet. That's our rough plan.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I liked playing around with it. It was good. Are you guys aiming to include more advanced features in the fund management style? Like options are an obvious interest
Yeah.
in any larger fund. Are you guys planning on including options within these ecosystems as well?
Absolutely. So let me try to take a step back and try to explain the concept of within these like Solrise investment funds. So the concept of Solrise investment funds, they're ultimately non-custodial. So the person that manages the fund, the manager, it never owns the assets. They're only able to issue signals that make assets owned by the fund interact with DeFi protocols. DeFi protocols is a pretty broad topic. For mainnet, we'll have AMM pools, liquidity pools, so like instant swapping. We are working with integrating the Serum DEX, which allows your fund and you as a fund manager to create a long-standing buy or sell order. I think this is the first time in the history of blockchains that a blockchain supports so much throughput that it can support like a order book based DEX on chain, and that you can post your orders in that way. So having long-standing buy or sell orders. Obviously, we've gotten a lot of synergies with some other protocols on Solana that are building as well. To name a few, so definitely options. A big one is leverage trading. So when you combine leverage trading, margin trading with these fund management, asset management tools, you basically get a real decentralized hedge fund. And then as well, we plan to include other asset classes such as futures, stocks, and synthetic assets as well. So basically any DeFi protocol that is on Solana or that will come to Solana at some point, I also forgot lending, to mention lending and borrowing, that every DeFi protocol that is on Solana that will come to Solana would be able to integrate with us and allow fund managers to use their protocol. Our goal ultimately for fund managers is to make them feel at home, enable for them to use any tools that they would use as they were managing their own funds.
Yeah, the interesting progression of a lot of this stuff, even with YouTube, you're more things have gone more direct to consumer, right? And that was another kind of find around the GameStop idea that deep fucking value was actually a gangster researcher. Like the kid was extraordinarily intelligent and found like a breaking point in one of these trades. It was like, well, this is a great trade. Like there's the volatility to the upside. It could be extraordinary, right? And not necessarily need that much pressure, especially as we were going through a V-shaped recovery. The markets were starting to go up because it just turned on the printing press. It was a hype moment, and we know that average people who just like researching are not actually average people. They're so good at what they've done. They've needed no background, no like coming up to that point per se, and then they can do extraordinary things better than the average hedge fund person who gets a job at Wall Street per se.
I guess they have a rule book how they need to play, and they're definitely. I mean, a prime example is some of the participants in our incentivized testnet. So first of all, we had some people that have been like second by second tracking markets on other exchanges and trying to put up swap orders right before the price propagates, which was very smart. The other thing that we almost couldn't believe happened is that we were like mirroring prices from some popular markets which might not have had the proper daily trading volume, and people put in like 20, 50, $100,000 orders to manipulate the price and get on the upside of their trade within like our incentivized testnet. We thought that was insane that people manipulated or tried to move prices on real world markets to get a spot within our competition.
That's fun. So this is one of the unique aspects, I think, of more open source or decentralized conversations. I really like that distributed systems in general is the powerful concept, especially with opportunity, the amount of people that are on the world, and you just, for the average person in Africa, it's still not, you can't own Tesla easily or something, or some type of evolving asset that could bode to your benefit more than any dollar you're holding in any failing currency, right? So it's a huge opportunity for this kind of an evolution of technology and human finance to be a bit more effective. So I get, were there any other interesting aspects? So that was one of the strengths. You found like some pretty clear signals about people doing interesting things within the system. So you could maybe even have repetition versions of these. What other interesting things happened during the testnet that you weren't expecting?
Yeah, so basically the reason for the testnet was twofold: to basically acquire user feedback, to start implementing all the user feedback, to see how people would break our protocol. But there's one important thing that people might be missing. So basically we cut out a good portion of our public sale and replace it with as them being rewards for the testnet competition, because we really wanted to incentivize and we really wanted to reward our early adopters and people who help grow the platform, and not who are able to put up a few dollars and buy our tokens directly, right? So we've gotten a lot of constructive feedback. We've the development team has been working across the clock for like syncing oracles, removing some assets that are too like volatile or too many or too like low trading volume, and we were kind of, we're all aboard. We were very happy with how the community reacted, and we can see that by the numbers. So around 60,000 people who signed up for this. It was very hard for both the development team and the community managers, who were the same as the development team across the clock, answering questions people and like explaining how the platform works, relaying feedback to us, and we were implementing it. So overall, it was a very good experience. I don't think that we could have done it better, to be honest.
Awesome. So it's always positive to start with the strengths. What are some of the difficulties you met along the testnet that you were expecting?
Yeah. So basically after the first week of the test, it was supposed to be a 2-week testnet. And within the first 3 or 4 days, we've seen some people exploiting the delay of the price oracles. So what we did is we decided, okay, let's give them that. Let's pause the competition after 1 week. Let's have 2 days for the dev team to pick up, to optimize oracles, and then restart the competition for the other week. So now we have 2 pools of like the phase 1 winners and the phase 2 winners, the top fund managers, the top investors for both phases. And actually we've established a partnership with Pit Networks from Jump Trading, who will be providing very high frequency oracles for Solana, and that will be the solution that we will be integrating for mainnet. So no chance in hell that something similar happens on mainnet.
Yeah, well, and with just almost anything in real world, when you put it out to test, there's always kind of something new that comes up. Something similar happened with Avalanche, or not similar, but Avalanche and Penguin when they started to run this front end kind of breaking point, and how slow V3 on Ethereum can be sometimes.
Solana, I mean, I must say that like Solana is very fast, and building software on top of Solana is very different from building software on top of Ethereum. You need to make your backends fast enough. You need to make your front ends responsive enough to these calls. You need to make your something called the RPC infrastructure stable enough. So there are a lot of more engineering challenges than what traditional blockchain developers used to.
Okay, so while we're here, because I'm kind of a layman around technology, like I'm just happy my Bluetooth mouse works. Like it turns on, it works. Like I'm so happy. I'm like, yes, because Like there's nothing I would be able to figure out about this thing to fix it in any way, shape, or form. So part of my question is, in, how would you try to explain the difference between writing an Ethereum versus Solana, like in a code structure sense?
Yeah. So the biggest difference is that Solana is not EVM based. So you do not write your smart contracts in Solidity. You need to write your smart contracts in Rust. And we all know at this point that Rust is a much harder language to master than Solidity, and it has like a much steeper learning curve. There are some pretty big efforts in Solana to create this framework for developing smart contracts on Solana that I see like being a huge potential, and bringing smart contract development on Solana closer and like make it easier for the developers. But I think that's the most important and the biggest difference. Like the whole programming model different, the execution model of these smart contracts is different. You need to have, I don't want to say a computer science degree, but almost a computer science degree to be able to recognize some of these concepts straight off the bat and like put them together in your head and be able to immediately start implementing them. There, as I said, like there is a learning curve, but I think it pays off because it's so fast and so cheap.
You know, from a benefit perspective, in terms of writing, right, like even though I can't read Chinese, I can tell by some of its signatures the difference in the concepts and the complexities. There's much more pictographic version. So with Ethereum, you're writing in Turing complete language, which means just generally is plain English or something.
In Solidity?
Yeah.
Sorry, in Ethereum. In Ethereum, it's Solidity. It's something that resembles a JavaScript-like syntax, which has types and it is a bit more structured.
And then what's Rust in comparison? That's, I know, it's just a fun question for me.
Yeah, Rust is, I would say, almost like reading Chinese.
Okay. So what are some of the added benefits of like writing in Rust as in comparison with
Yeah.
Solidity?
So I want to make like one addition. It's not only Rust, it's basically anything that compiles into this thing called WebAssembly or WASM. So, but the main like compiler or the best language to write like those sorts of programs in is Rust currently. Rust is pretty good because of multiple reasons. First, it's like type, like most of the things before you actually like run the program, the compiler catches. So before you run it, it can tell you some errors that you might see happening. It's very strict in terms of what you can do and what you cannot do. So it helps you like catch some of the errors before like deploying to production. If I would need to put it in simple terms.
Okay. Nice. I like that as well. Yeah. So for me, you know, like again, because I don't have a broad perspective of how the technology works. Like I'm just glad this stuff works when I plug it in. It's fun for me to kind of go down and see what other people who spend more time with the technology feel about it from a conceptual level, more than a technical level. Because then I can get how you feel about it, kind of. And that was definitely like, okay, well, so distinctively, what I can tell is that Ethereum's like it can run a bit faster and looser. You can play around with a little bit more. Whereas even when you go to compile on Rust, you're like, no, this won't work. You've messed something up in the code here.
Yeah, and there's one more thing, like the ecosystem of Ethereum and is much more developed. Obviously, you can just take a lot of the smart contracts that are open source and put them together and basically run your company. In Solana, we are still missing a bit of the like DeFi tool set. There's a lot of things that need to be written and deployed. There are a few things missing, but based on the response of the most recent Solana hackathon, which had like a huge amount of applicants, I think we'll get there pretty fast.
Yeah, with these little Legos, I guess.
Yeah. That's one of the like composability of these programs on chain is one of the biggest features on Solana, that like one smart contract like can communicate with or consume other smart contracts functions, and that's pretty important.
Okay, so we'll go a little micro first, and then we'll ask a macro question. We'll go to some macro questions to kind of finalize everything. So what's the roadmap for the next, like, I don't know, 4 quarters look like?
So we are going to go to mainnet. We are going to integrate as many as DeFi protocols into the platform. As I said previously, our goal is to make fund managers to feel as much as home as possible. So you're using a DEX, you'll get a DEX. You're using an AMM, you'll get an AMM. You want options, leverage trading, like any DeFi protocol on Solana, we would be integrating and allow fund managers to manage their funds using those DeFi primitives. We will be running like protocol usage incentivization programs, so people diversifying their investments within different investment funds, people running their funds properly will all be rewarded properly post mainnet. We are also working on some little thing that we want to that's within our kind of longer term vision, and that's we don't want only like strictly DeFi people using our platform for investments, and because we're already democratizing the space of investments within Solana, we thought, okay, so why wouldn't we try to onboard some potentially non-crypto people, right? If for example, a fund is comprised purely out of stocks, that's something that an external person can understand, and they can see, okay, I want to share within this stock portfolio. So that's something that we want to do as well in the next 4 quarters, let's say.
Oh, as someone who ended up in the kind of investment space by accident, you're talking about the beginning. You were playing video games and programming. I was like hitchhiking around, busking. So we started in very different places. We're having a conversation today. So I try to be kind of playful with these things here too. Like I got here basically by accident. My interest in investments and management of economic wealth and new ideas, asymmetry, volatility, those all came through my love and interest in mathematics and science, I guess, in general, which in no way had to do with money when I was first interested in it. This is these broader spectrum conversations. So now that we're on a bit more of a macro perspective, what's like the end result vision? How does Solrise fit into, like, let's say, a global picture? What does that look like 5-10 years down the road?
It would be the de facto standard for asset management and investments. If you want to invest your money, you would think of Solrise first. That's it.
And awesome. Okay, so we'll go.
You gave me 5 to 10 years, so like that's the 5 to 10 year vision.
Oh yeah, no, that's good. Is keep be succinct about it. There's like a lot. One of the things I love about having conversations, inevitably, like my goal is just try to learn more about a bunch of things, the people I'm talking to, and the topics that we're going over. Like, I mean, I'm not an expert at anything. I get like I ended up interested in these things because I like conversations around volatility, asymmetry, growth, and the mechanisms in which way we communicate value, just kind of like we're doing now. So how we'll kind of like end like or lead out today's episode is staying in this macro sector. So what was one of the first programs you made when you were younger?
I remember the day when I understood that I can write a piece of code that fetches a row from the database. I couldn't sleep that night. I was so excited knowing what are the capabilities and what are the things that I could build with this. I legit couldn't sleep that night.
No, you're joking.
I swear.
The story you're telling everyone.
No, that's a real story. I remember the day I couldn't sleep.
That's fascinating. So what triggered that moment? What was happening?
So I was trying to set up this like hosted forum that would display the amount of players that are at that time on my Counter-Strike server, and I said, this is so badly written that I cannot. Why cannot I configure this? And then like I tried reading the code, understanding the code, reading tutorials, and like it took me maybe like 3 to 4 weeks at that point in time. And when I finally got it, it was like a epiphany, an enlightenment. And when I understood that single primitive that I can just like fetch something from a database and write to the database through code, through a front end, through a website, like that's where I was kind of sold.
And how old were you?
That's around like 12 or 13.
Yeah,
like,
fantastic. So what about you got any favorite books?
Well, I'm one of the newest generation that like doesn't have such an attention span that can read books. I like reading some tweets sometimes, but like I'm not. I like reading reading about books about entrepreneurs and how they started off. So especially some local entrepreneurs, which I'm close to. So
And Vidor, how old are you?
I'm I have always some issues calculating this. I think I'm 27.
Okay, close enough. It's fine.
Yeah.
Within anywhere within 2 years, I feel is like a reputable answer because I see here, for those two fun things. Normally, you don't want to ever just disclose your exact birthday. That's like an attack vector. Generally speaking, it's just better to lie about it always. Like it's always the wrong birthday, guys. Come on, let's be clear here. Anyway, point of this story. Um, it, it's because we're at a like things are happening so fast. Like when I was younger, there was no real information around investing or finance at all. Like you had to go to cryptic libraries to like read the creature from Jekyll Island or something, right? So it's like, but it evolved so quickly. Like technology changed so quickly. Like I listen to more audiobooks than I read now too, because I can now like stretch or go for a walk while I'm listening to something like that I find interesting instead of just sitting like. Although I get a lot more from just actually reading. So no favorite books. What is this?
I might have a revised answer to that. I mean, the first time I understood like what are assets, what are liabilities when I read like Rich Dad Poor Dad. So I
Nice.
guess like let's call it that.
Yeah. Have you read Think and Grow Rich?
Nope. Let me take some notes. I mean, you can give me recommendations.
Oh well, it's kind of along the same line, although in a different structure. I started falling in love with reading once I realized I didn't have to finish everything. Like I had this kind of like stupid moment where I thought I had to finish each book I started. If I started the book, I didn't finish it. I wouldn't read another motherfucking book. Now, if I pick something up and I don't like it, I just instantly put it down and start reading something else.
I think I need to get over the same feeling that you got over. So
Yeah, it made a world of difference for me for my reading habits because I like reading. I just would get bored with something. And I felt that if I didn't finish it, I like hadn't earned the next book, so I just gave up. I gave up on reading, but now I'll just read until I'm bored, and then I'll pick up something else. I'll go from tweet to book to web page. Like, anyways, um, so okay. Last macro question here. I love that you were inspired by programming. For me, it was like music and plants. Like I had a different run. So I love that we still end up interested in the same thing. Recently, what do you think is some of the biggest hurdles we need to overcome in this sector? As yeah, it's a broad spectrum macro question for you.
is the question related to maybe blockchain, cryptocurrencies, or like software development in general?
Yeah, maybe. Well, actually, you can either go cryptocurrency, like this space specifically, or developer stuff. Because I'm interested. I just don't know a lot about that world.
That's a good question. I mean, uh, in terms of cryptocurrencies, obviously we see a lot of potential regulations upcoming that might be good, that might be not good. Uh, I don't have a firm stance, but I guess what I hear very often is in like all of these areas on a very macro level is that there's a lot of noise. We need to focus more. We need to basically have work items that we need to do, and we if we're all over, I think like the overall output is not of preferable quality, especially in the cryptocurrency and like the blockchain space. A lot of noise.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting like nature itself, right? It builds so many versions of itself. Like the noise, to some degree, is almost part of its rent, its stability. Like it evolves from an enormous amount of failures to make like the good stuff really stand out. Like there's a natural rate where things just die and are consistently regenerated. Now, do you think that? Now, I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of noise in probably almost everything. People are attracted to more data than the signal of the data itself, which is
Exactly. Yeah.
is always a difficult one, because probably because the technical side of it is such a nuanced conversation. So what about the technical side? Like, are hackathons basically like the evolved version of Counter-Strike parties? Is that what happened?
So you might as well be right because I mean based on my limited sample of the recent hackathons, and I mean, by the way, this is totally in context and that I might have forgot to mention it. Like Solrise Finance, based on the idea, came and like got executed in 2 weeks on the previous Solana hackathon, where we won like second place out of more than 3,000 participants at the time. So
Nice. Congratulations.
I guess that was like one of those, okay, let's like sit down for 2 weeks, have no life, and like do something cool. I guess you could call it very similar to LAN parties and Counter Strike matches.
Awesome. That was a fun one. See, because when I was younger, I remember playing video games like Halo a little bit. And we'd have like weekend binge parties, right? So I just when I started to think about the hackathon, I was like, wait, are these evolved versions of our Halo hangouts? Like,
I guess like enjoying is when you're kind of getting older, getting associated to learning new things and
yeah,
exploring, especially in technology where and in blockchain cryptocurrency space. If you just don't keep up with the space, you're gonna uh, everyone's gonna overtake you, and like 1 year in blockchain is like 5 year in like any other software development industry. So I guess like we all as a team are very motivated. We're all like fans of the technology. We're all true believers. So ultimately, I think that weighs in as well.
yeah. Well, I agree. I think my what I was insinuating was that well, the growth and the maturity and the development of something, because I think a hackathon sounds like fun. Like these kind of things sound fun to me. Like I was like, oh, cool, like a party. We're all going to get together and people are going to try to build stuff in short orders of time. Like a lot of us are going to fail miserably at that. Like this is going to be great. Like I love this. I love the tinkering mentality. You know, we were talking about the noise and like how things develop. So I guess maybe the developer community is having more fun than the broader perspectives of like just everybody understanding what's taking place.
Starting a new business is very hard, and I guess if you started at a hackathon, you also like consider it as having fun, and justifying the failure if it happens is easier because you were having fun. So I mean, I guess like hackathons, as you said, like it's a win for everyone.
So I guess just while we're here too to kind of finalize, why did you guys decide to join the hackathon and participate? Like how did that happen?
We already had some things built on Solana and we wanted to build something cool. As I said, we were frustrated about Robinhood and high fees on like every other platform. So basically from the first idea to like the finalization of the execution, it was 2 weeks. So we said like, let's win this. It's gonna be great fun. It's gonna help our reputation in the space. And we basically did it. We didn't think much of it at the time. We didn't even think that we were gonna run this as a product, like our main project. So that happened as well. We gained a lot of interest, gained some insane numbers based on the proof of concept that we built. So it panned out well. I'm happy.
Yeah, and see that's and again, I guess it kind of brings us to the part of this macro is that some of the signal comes from the noise, like it comes from the world of the randomness taking place. Like, yeah, we didn't plan to do this. It was like we're just kind of messing around. We didn't, had no idea that we go. I know how that goes. Like a good chunk of my life has like I try to live that like, oh shit, like this is where we got to. I had no idea this was happening.
We work in mysterious ways.
Yeah, that's the thing. The universe is a fun place to play. Well, I had a lot of fun. I try to make these conversations as personal and as lighthearted. The goal is to try to highlight the people more than the technology because it's something I don't even understand. So I try to get a feel for who's building what more than what they're building per se. It's usually more interesting to me anyways because I can actually understand it as well. Like Um, look, again, I think that from a broad perspective, decentralized asset management, the ability to kind of view it from a social media perspective, bringing all the tools, especially if you've got more product potentials in there, or the ability to maybe go into venture capital style plays, which is what almost all of this is still. I can't express that enough. That there's just a huge opportunity for the younger generation to have a much more like intimate relationship with their own finances and the way they grow and develop wealth. So I think you guys have built a great product. I had a lot of fun playing around with it. I didn't spend as much time there as I should have, but I didn't have the could have time to do it either. So I think you guys built something great from the hour or two that I did kind of, I played around, bought some things, and just great work on that so far as well. And so the launch is on this coming Tuesday, the 29th, right? Right?
That's the FTX IEO.
Yes.
And we're gonna announce our mainnet launch soon after that.
Okay, so the mainnet launch is the secret. We'll keep an eye on that one. And then Solrise.finance, Solrise Finance at Twitter. Check them out on the links down below as well. We'll be touching base back with you again, maybe once every 2 quarters or something, to see how things are going. Well, I like the development and the growth of a story anyways. I like that Super Nintendo went from being a board game to not being a board game. I love those moments. So we'll stick around. We'll see where you guys are in the next little while as well. Is there anything else you would like to leave the Bear family with?
I guess we covered a lot of things. I mean, thanks for the feedback. We really like that you liked Dawn and enjoying participating in it, and we're waiting for you at Mainnet. This was a very pleasant conversation. Thanks, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Fedora. I love learning, and more I've grown to love the interesting people that are building things. I was never a big I was never interested in capitalism when I was younger at all, in any way, shape, or form. Now I actually quite like it. I think finding the excitedness about all the unique aspects of being a human. So there's a fun changeover in my perspective, like of how we build the world around us, which is fantastic. So I wish you and the team the best of luck. We've got the light paper, which I read this morning, is also down in the links. I do suggest it. It's a nice 8 or 9 pager. So take a look at that if you guys are interested. Remember, none of this is financial advice, but if you understand the idea of tails, I don't lose much, heads, I win. This is all brilliant. Fedora, thank you for your time today. Give us a thumbs up if you like this content, Bear family. Subscribe, all those fun things. Follow Solrise on all their social media channels, and check out their mainnet when it goes live at the unannounced date. And we'll see you guys again on the next episode.